I'm Jeanette Keynes from Jewelry Arts Inc. In this video, I'm going to show you how to patch a 22 karat gold bezel. It got overstretched a little bit and it needed a little TLC. And this technique works just the same in gold as it will in silver. So here we have a common scenario that, has happened to the best of us. We have a beautiful big tall bezel because it's a big, fat, juicy stone, which I'll show you in a minute because I'm sure Susie will get it out and let us fondle it. But I'm always a big fan of making your bezels tight, right? Because when you go to set, everything really loose bezel means you have extra metal and you get funny lumps and stuff. However, sometimes in the pursuit of getting a tight bezel, or maybe you're having a hard time getting your seam straight and you trim it a little and you trim it a little more, again, happens to the best of us, you end up with your bezel a little too tight. I just have to show off that stone because it's such a fucking look at that baby. If that isn't hot stuff, I don't know what it is. You know what I mean? Gorgeous. So what we were doing, we made the bezel and then we went to reshape it and it's a little too tight. So we were hammering it a little, as one does. And the seam split a little bit at the bottom, right? Like that. Now you can definitely take your pliers and kind of squeeze it back together and refuse. But because we've stretched it, it doesn't really want to come together. You know what I mean? It really needs a little bit of extra metal. So we're just going to patch it, which is no big deal. So all I did was I said, okay, let me have some of your same, this is 26 gauge, 22 karat. This is 26 gauge, 22 karat. It's usually a good use for scrap. I'm just going to cut a little piece. We're going to lay it over top and we're going to fuse it on. Now, a lot of times a regular, a smaller bezel, I just do it right on my solderite board, charcoal block, whatever. In this case, it's really quite big and it will be a little easier to fuse it in the kiln. I just so happen to have a kiln going because I'm granulating, so all the stars aligned for us. So I'm just gonna put this right on top. Now, I can also use a little bit of the G glue to help hold it in place. If you're careful, you don't have to use the G glue, but sometimes it just makes your life a little bit easier to have it stick in place. Now, if this were truly a hollow form, we would stick it into the seam. You know what I mean? Down in. Because this is basically flat, we're gonna do this patch style, where basically we're just gonna lay some metal over top, fuse it on, and then we'll file it a little bit. It all blend together and no one will know except for everybody in TV land. And this is a technique. It happens with a big bezel. If you're doing any chasing and repoussé, I guarantee you every beautiful chased and repoussé piece that you see has got patches because it just happens. You know what I mean? You accidentally go through, oops. Do you think that people are taking that lion that's fighting Hercules that's on a mountain? Do you think they're taking that and being oh, I guess I have to start over because there's a little hole in it? No, they're patching it. So I'll cut that maybe in half-ish. Usually I just cut some little strip thing like that. Doesn't really matter the exact shape, to be honest with you, because it's just adding extra metal. It's nothing really. But you don't try to make it so small that it's just covering the hole. You know what I'm saying? You want to make sure to overlap it all the way around. Okay, I'm going to put a tiny bit of glue on there just for giggles. I'll dry it for a second on top of the lid and then I'll throw it right in the kiln. Okay? And if your hands are steady and you don't do anything too cuckoo bananas, you don't have to use the glue, but figure anything that helps things stay in place can be helpful, especially considering all the coffee that some of us drink. Okay, like that. It's great. I'm gonna pick it up. I'm gonna sit it on top of the kiln lid, which is hot, just for a second to kind of dry the glue. Now, you don't do that violent of a method if you're drying granules. You have to be much more careful. This, you'd have to be a little more cuckoo bananas to get it to roll everywhere, unlike granules. That's all they want to do in life is roll far away from where you're going. And you know that the key, this is with moving granulation or anything you're trying to move that you don't want to move. You're gonna brace your hand and you do not take your eyeballs off of the object. The minute you take your eyeballs off the object, your hand goes like this. Okay? How did I learn that? From years of enameling and putting enamels to dry on top of the kiln. And I'm just gonna leave it there for like a second. And then I'm gonna have Alexis move over to the side and I'm gonna pop it right in there. We'll turn off the overhead light. Because you know, fusing always, the darker it is, the easier you see everything. In a group studio environment, you know, you use the lid to cast a shadow and turn off your overhead light. If you're at home, you know, turn off whatever the fuck you can. It could be totally dead, you know, dark room. It's just much easier to see. Okay. So also, once I put it in the kiln, I'm gonna do just like I always do with granulation or fusing, okay? We're going to use the flame straight up and down. We're gonna do tight circles. We're gonna build up the heat until you can really see the connections, you know, get bright. And for us, the connection really isn't gonna be the seam. It's gonna be on either side of the seam. It's gonna be the seam between the patch and the existing sheet. And I'm gonna flow it there and on the other side and make sure it flows on the other side as well, like all the way around. And then we'll just round it and file it and take off the excess. Okay? Alex, would you mind? Thank you.
Do you guys mind if I just scooch a little bit this way? Yep.
Okay, nice hot kiln. I'm gonna move this to a 0 tip though. That's usually what I use when I'm fusing a bezel. You know, and it's not like that it's impossible to fuse a bezel this big on something like this, but having the kiln heat really helps as you get into the larger sizes of things. There we go. You see the glue get a little dark? You know what I mean? And so, okay. Using the lid to cast a shadow. And I'm gonna be a tiny bit aggressive with the heat because this is a big ass bezel and this is going to take a good amount of heat to get this to do its thing. So can you see the line where that patch is meeting the bezel, how that's a bright orange? Okay. You see that little shine? Oh, and it got dark and filled in. And then I'm going to tilt it so that I can see the other side. And then we're going to make sure the top as well. Because you want to make sure, obviously, it fills in everywhere. Because you don't want it to be touching in one spot and have it be open. You're trying to just, you know, give your bezel new material to work with. Okay, nice and bright. You see that line? And then you see that, how you flash it. And then you see it gets a little dark. Okay? I'm just going to flip it and do it from the top to make sure that I can see that that's all filled in. I think it did, but... yeah, it filled in. Because you see how you can tell it filled in? Because it doesn't get bright. If you don't see that bright seam anymore, you know that there's no space in between the two. Okay? So we're going to take it out. We're going to let it cool. You're going to pickle it. We'll do a little close-up of it to show what it looks like. We'll bend it round. If it doesn't fit yet, we're going to go ahead and stretch it while it's still like this. And just once we're done stretching, then we'll go ahead and clean it up.
Okay.
Okay? Susan looked very unhappy at that moment of like, okay. So you see how that looks basically? It's got like a little molten metal showing. Like so, you see. I mean, I really made sure it was very well melted, even like for a normal fusing procedure, a little over melted, because you want it absolutely, you know, filled in and everything like that. Like, see? I'll turn it around so you can see from the top as well. There you go. So you see what I mean? It's all really well melted on there. We're going to go ahead and stretch and get it to fit. And then, you know, we'll just round it out and file just like a normal cleanup procedure. Also, here's from the inside view. So this is why you sort of overfuse a little bit. You see how that little tear in the seam, the metal has truly flowed in there and filled in. And that is what you're looking for because, you know, that's what you're trying to do. You're patching, you're filling in. So that should hold together beautifully.